Hello, hello, possums. Yes, it is I, the conspicuous noob. And today, a very, very quick video just to cover the letter from the producer live, which is going to be taking place 7 PM PDT, that's Americano time, on Friday evening. So this is going to be my first one in my Final Fantasy adventure. So what's particularly interesting about this is it's going to announce a lot of the adjustments and class changes that they're going to have for Endwalker. Now, at the moment, I'm currently going through Heavensward, having a lovely time in my Scholar, but, you know, it's not a perfect job by any means. What job is? And as you can see, I am short of yak milk. So, while I smack a few yaks around, let's go over a few of the ideas or suggestions that, you know, I kind of like to see in the Scholar in the future. Now, one of the reasons I was resistant to running an Arcanist in the first place is because I historically have a difficult relationship with pet AI in MMOs. They tend to be a bit on the thicky side, they don't path particularly cleverly, they die very, very easily. So, you know, I spent the first 30 levels, I actually quite enjoyed being an Arcanist then, and then I went Scholar because I wanted to try something I was also not particularly comfortable with, which is healing. That said, you know, for a pet class, I don't really interact with my pet an awful lot. At the moment you get a choice between Eos and Selene for your fairy, and it used to matter, but it doesn't anymore. It's just an aesthetic thing. So I go for Eos because I just prefer her. So, you know, at the moment Eos will heal things, Selene will also heal things, and then you've got Seraph of 80, which I haven't got yet, of course, but that will shield things, and they can't really overlap. So, you know, so far so good. You can see in the bottom right hand corner of this footage that, you know, I do have a pet bar. It's just I haven't used it since I went Scholar, and the only times I was using it when I was an Arcanist was in the mistaken belief that some of my Carbuncle's abilities were only really effective actually in melee range, exploding around all of the mobs, which turned out to be a complete lie, and I stopped doing it shortly afterwards. So that's a bit disappointing. You know, if you have an entire bar that's just, you know, pretty much ignored, I'm feeling that, you know, we need a little bit more oomph to the pet. You know, it's difficult to strike a balance between, you know, understanding the pets aren't particularly clever in the first place, but at the same time, you know, a little bit more pet interaction so you are actually rewarded for using it properly and efficiently is also kind of nice too. And at the moment, you know, you just pull Eos out and she goes and does her thing, and I'm sure Seraph will be something very similar. They all have very similar cooldowns. It just seems like I don't really have a lot of interaction with her. So I would personally like to see more fairies. I think we need more fairies in our lives. You know, why just stop at the 3? I think there's at least 2 more that we could potentially have. For a start, you know, I would like a more offensive fairy. I mean, I'm not talking about someone who like sits on the corner and just balls insults at people walking past. I'm thinking more damage. It just gives you a little bit more DPS when you're out in the field. You know, I'm doing the questing and I'm leveling at the moment, but, you know, I'm sure I'll be doing other activities at max level, which will require me to be out in the field, and it would be nice to have a little bit more bang for my buck. So, you know, I was thinking in terms of, you know, fairy sacrifice, you could send the fairy in and she just blows up and boom, get a nice big AoE explosion, something like that, a little bit more offensive utility. The other one is Geoff. Now, Geoff is he's a little different to all the other fairies, but I was thinking more of a support fairy. You know, because, you know, sometimes there's an awful lot going on and you really don't have time to Azuna that dude over there because he's being a bit of an idiot. It would be nice to have a fairy that would identify that and just clean it off, and, you know, maybe buff people up as well. I'm not talking about shielding, I'm talking about, you know, giving them very, very minor buffs over a short period of time, that sort of thing. I don't think a support fairy could go much further than that just because of the AI restrictions. I haven't got fairy gauge yet because I think you get it at 70, but I have to say I'm not enthused by the prospect of it. I mean, I've had a look at, you know, other people's comments on how the fairy gauge works and other people's problems on how it's utilised and the abilities that are available. And I only have 2 abilities actually tied to this thing, which is the Fey Union, which is just like a single target tether, and then Fey Blessing, which is a much stronger version of Whispering Dawn, essentially. It just seems like it's an extra thing that's been thrown in for the hell of it, and it doesn't really seem to have a little full... It needs to have much more on it. It needs to have much more on, or it needs to be removed altogether. Because I'm not very enthused about Fairy Gauge at all. So I would probably just remove Fairy Gauge, in my personal opinion, and bring in the other two fairies. So you have the opportunity, you know, if things are going very smooth, you don't really need the heals, you can just send Geoff in to blow some stuff up instead. That seems more intuitive pet control-y kind of thing that I would expect from a pet class. Now, one of the interesting things, of course, is Sage, and we're going to get some more interesting ideas about, you know, Sage, the fourth healer in Final Fantasy XIV, and what exactly it's going to be doing. Certainly there's lasers involved, we know this for sure. Whether they're going to be cauterizing lasers as well, who knows? I guess we'll find out soon. But I'm going to be interested to see how it fits into the whole healer structure, because, you know, at the moment you have a white mage, pure throughput, you have a scholar, which is very little throughput but a lot of shields, and then you have Astrologian who can just flick a card over and do whatever it feels like. So you've got a good balance there already, and how is the Sage going to fit into that? Is it, I mean, with the lasers, a lot of people are speculating it's going to be your damage, it's going to be your blaster. You know, with the ethos that basically the more damage you do, the less healing you'll have to do eventually. If we're going to have Scholar to be distinctive in any way, shape or form, then it probably needs to go harder into the shields. I don't mean the shields get stronger, because you'll get to a point where you can just shield everything and it's incredibly dull, and if you design the encounters in such a way that you can just shield everything and AFK, that doesn't seem very rewarding, and it's not as if the damage rotation is dynamic either, but we'll get onto that later. So, you know, at the moment we've got shields for good, and that's great, but, you know, why don't we have some shields for evil? You know, we do come from Arcanist stock. We had a couple of very, very nasty spells like Fester and stuff when I was leveling. Now, I'm not saying bring Fester back, but I'm saying, you know, shields don't necessarily have to be good. You can trap someone in a bubble and they can feel rather uncomfortable inside it. So, you know, the ability to debuff things like, you know, reduce the skill speed of the attacking mobs, that sort of thing, or like an unsafe, I had this idea about an unsafe bubble, like a lightning bubble or something, that slowly collapses inwards on the targeted area. And you know, the damage it does inside that window, it basically just spends all the ether flow stacks that you've got. So the more ether flow stacks you have, the more damage it's going to do. I would like to see, you know, more offensive purposes for ether flow as well. Energy drain is okay, but it's not really what I was after. So, you know, I was thinking something more like that sort of AoE bomb kind of thing. But, you know, you can do shields for support mechanics as well. You know, if you need a speed increase to get out of a certain mechanic, it would be nice to throw down a bubble that speeds everybody up for a second or two. You know, stuff like that. Stuff like that. Let's, you know, if we're going to, you know, carve out a niche that's going to be shields, then, you know, let's make our shields the best ever, and make them more useful than just protecting people from damage. In terms of damage, it's a little limited, isn't it? Let's be honest. I mean, you know, we have one dot bio, or biolysis. I think I get at 72, so it just replaces it. It's not a second dot, which is a pity. But I suppose it would have a different name, otherwise everyone would get very confused. Moving on, and you know, we've got Broil, which is our main nuke, which is slow. And then we've got Ruin that we can use on the run, or I actually use Ruin straight after Broil when I'm out in the world as well, just to get that additional damage. So, you know, that's okay, and the AoE, the Art of War, you know, that's fun, it's very pretty. Yeah, you can get a lot of good use out of that by pulling a whole bunch of mobs together, but, you know, that's not an awful lot, and apart from Energy Drain, there really isn't an awful lot more that you can do. So, perhaps a little bit more interactivity in terms of... you know, the DPS rotation as well. I would like a second dot. You can bring back Miasma if you want. You can even keep the cast time if you like. But I was just thinking, you know, we've got a few spells that we did leave behind when we dropped our Arcanist pants and pulled on our Scholar Breaches. And it would be nice to at least have a second dot going out there. I would also, this is just a suggestion, but, you know, maybe there's a chance 1%'s fine. To slightly reduce the cast time of the next Broil. So, you know, if you're doing the right thing and you're keeping your dots up on the enemy, then you will be rewarded by having a quicker Broil cast time and more DPS as a result. It's that kind of system that sort of rewards you for doing it right. Anyway, you know, I'm a noob scholar, so, you know, I'm learning the entire thing, and I'm getting new spells as I go, and, you know, I haven't even got Excogitation yet, which I'm looking forward to, personally. So... those are just a few of my thoughts as to how Scholar's going and where it's should be heading. I'm going to be very, very interested. They're going to be sitting on the YouTube live feed to find out all about, you know, what they're going to do with Scholar. Please get rid of Fairy Gauge. I mean, I haven't even got it yet and I don't like it. But for those of you in places other than Washington, I think it's 10 p.m. Friday in New York. And then we get into like the sucky hours. If you're in London, it's 3 a.m. on Saturday morning. In Kiev, it's 5 a.m. If you're in Bali, because you know you might be, it's 10 a.m. on Saturday morning, so that's quite pleasant. You'll have a hangover, but you'll still be able to watch. And for the Melburnians and Australianas in the Great Commonwealth Federation, you will have a 12 noon, so have a spot of lunch and a coffee, and see what Yoshi has come up with his team. So yeah, so I'm really quite interested and quite excited about this. It's going to be fun. But that's it. So I hope you're having a lovely time in Final Fantasy XIV. I haven't been on a lot because of the whole Darashir thing. But now that I've finished that, I should be on a bit more. And I will see you on the next one. But until then, I am the conspicuous Moo, and an adloquium on you.